Practice. It's Miss Jillian. I'm here today to show you how to color with high quality. I had this drawing left over from Creativity Corner from last spring, and I thought that this would be a great drawing to show you how to use colored pencils, markers, and some crayons to color with high quality. We're not going to color in the whole thing today, but we will talk about a couple of different things that we can do to improve our coloring skills. Excuse me. So the first thing that we're going to start out with today is we're going to start out today with some colored pencils. And I'm going to think about what in my artwork would look really good drawn with colored pencils. So I actually happen to have a bunch of cool colored pencils right here. So I'm gonna color in my water, which is this space behind my surfboards, with my cool colored pencils. So I'm gonna start off with one of my darker colored pencils. And what's great about colored pencils is you can always start off by adding a little bit of pressure. If you add a little bit of pressure as you're coloring, you're going to get a lighter value, so a lighter shade or tone of your color. And then as you add pressure, you can make it darker. So you can make shadow, which is going to be our darkest value, and then we're going to have a lighter value, which is going to be highlights. I'm going to leave a little bit of white space right there because I'm going to blend some colors, but I want to start out dark at the bottom and up towards the top. I want it to get lighter because sunlight hits the top of the water, so the blue is going to be lighter at the top of each wave and darker towards the bottom. So I also like to press really lightly to start out with because that way you don't have so much color on the paper that you can't layer another layer on top. So I'm going back in, and notice that when I'm pressing lightly, I'm using the side of the lead of my pencil, because if I use the tip, which I was right around this edge, I'm going to get really dark, definitive lines, and it will be impossible to blend with those. So I know that I want this to be dark, this really dark value of this blue, but I don't want the rest of it to be that value. All right, and then as I get closer to the top of the wave, I am switching the pressure on my pencil to really light, and then I'm fading to white. So now I'm going to choose this lighter blue. This is great. If I chose a blue that was a little bit too close in value to the one that I was just doing, it'd be hard to kind of see this gradual blend, but because I chose a lighter blue, have a little bit more contrast. So now I have this section of my wave of my water where it is two different kinds of blue, and you can see it goes from this dark blue of my first colored pencil to the light blue of my second colored pencil, and I'm overlapping a little bit. Now notice that I'm moving my pencil in a circular motion. That way my lines are going to be really even and my colors aren't going to blend abruptly. So it's not going straight from this blue that I just used to this blue. It's a gradual transition. It's not abrupt. There's not like a line of this dark blue right there in the middle. And then I can continue in this middle section. I'm going to have all the colors kind of get lighter because it looks like this part of the water is getting closer to the sun, which is kind of a trick of the eye when you see the sunset over water. But we're going to make this section a little bit lighter so I'm not pressing quite as hard right here. And a little bit darker right here at the bottom, so I'm adding a little bit more pressure for shading. And this is a great, blending like this is really great for any time that you're coloring something in, not just necessarily a coloring sheet, but that variety of values, that contrast between the light and the dark really will make your artwork look more finished, and in some cases it will make your artwork look more realistic if realism is what you're going for. In any case, it will definitely make your craftsmanship look a lot better. So really just building color, layers of color, moving my hand slowly and controlled, staying inside the lines, and really moving my pencil in circular motions. Now I'm going to add this blue, which is what I was using for the upper area up here. I'm going to add a layer. I left some white space at the top, so it's a little bit lighter. Again, I'm pressing a little bit lighter with this one, trying to use the edge of my pencil instead of the point so I can have my lines be really well blended without any harsh, random pencil strokes that pop up in my blue. My blending's turning gradually from the darker blue to the lighter blue. Now I'm going to add a third color for this one because it's going to be, I'm going to use that here too. So it has that hint of this sky blue color in here. So it has this hint of this color, so it won't look so weird when I add it up here. So it kind of ties all of the shapes together. And again, as always, I just want to make sure I'm staying inside the line, that I'm coloring nicely and neatly. And now, because this is again the closest to the sun, I'm going to use this as my darker blue. So you can kind of see that transition. So this is going to be my darker blue in this section. And then I'm going to use the sky blue at the top. So now get those circles in there so everything looks well blended. And this is what you can do for large spaces. So if you have like a large space, it's always great to blend more than just one color, or use more than one color when you're coloring with colored pencil, because it creates a more dynamic and visually interesting element. And if I were just to color all of my water this one color blue, even if I did it nicely and neatly, it wouldn't be quite as visually interesting as it is with the blending. Okay, so you can see down here I added a lot of pressure. In the middle, I'm actually a little bit disappointed because I added too much saturation. I added too much of this blue there, so now it's not quite as light as I wanted it to be, but you can't really erase colored pencil. You can, but sometimes it looks a little messy, so I'm just going to try to fix it by making it a little bit darker down here, so there's more of a contrast. So contrast really is the difference between two areas and the lightness and the darkness of an area. So it's a little bit different than value. All right, and then here's my light blue. I'm going to blend it in the top. And I'm also, even on the top, because the sun is setting and would be going across the water, I'm going to add a little bit of yellow in there, and it's going to come out looking a little green, just because when you mix yellow and blue together you get green. But we're going to add some yellow to just make it look like the sun light is on that water. So I'm just using a little bit of yellow right in the middle, a little bit of green. Not a lot, just in a couple of places, mostly towards the top of the water, of the waves where the light would be hitting. So we have all those different kinds of blues in there. We got a little bit of yellowish green in there. So we really have, whoopsies, really well colored in area. So this would be great for any large areas with colored pencil, because these are pretty big shapes you can see. So for smaller shapes, like over here on our surfboard right here with colored pencils, what you're going to want to do is you're going to, and I'm going to use some warmer colors since we got a lot of cool colors going on so far. So have some red color or warm colors. I'll use this color too. All right, so I'm going to put this one back. For small spaces like this, if you have fine point markers like this, that works really, really well. But for these teeny tiny little shapes, we want to make sure that we're coloring in each shape a different color, so they're not all just one color. I'm going to make a pattern with this orange and a different warm color. But I don't want the same orange in this space right there. I want to switch it up. Even if there's a slight difference, it's going to look a lot nicer and neater. And because these are smaller spaces, I'm not going to have much room to blend. So I'm going to use more of the point of my colored pencil. And you could also use a fine point marker in these smaller spaces. Now you can see I kind of colored outside of the line on that. And I did that on purpose because you can see how coloring over your line with your colored pencil really dulls the black of the Sharpie. So I really wanted you guys to see that. And I can touch it up with Sharpie, but it doesn't always look that nice and neat. So now I'm going to move on to this next section, working really hard to stay inside the lines, not drawing on any of my Sharpie that I worked really hard to trace over my pencil lines with. Okay, that's colored in pretty solidly. I might go back in and add another layer of color just to make sure I have all of my white spots covered. And you'll notice I color in all of the shapes I want this color first before I switch to the other color. That just kind of makes it easier for my pattern. I don't forget where what goes. Now I can switch. Let's choose. Did I use this color yet? I don't think I used this color. Let's give it a try. So now again, moving my pencil in kind of wide circular shapes. I'll show you what that looks like on the back so you guys can see. So I'm kind of moving it like this, but I'm moving it so close together that it's blending. It's kind of filling in all of that space at once without any hard lines. I'm going to finish coloring this in. And then if I want this to be darker, I can go back in. But I think what I'm going to do, so I could go back in and add another layer, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of this crimson red to all of my sections here, just so it has kind of the same undertone. So I'm just very lightly, because if I press too hard, this whole thing will turn crimson, because crimson is a darker tone, darker kind of red than the pink that I was using. I'm going to do the same thing right here. Just to kind of cover up all the white spaces. And awesome. Alright, so those are a couple of different ways that you can use colored pencil to color with high quality. I'm going to show you really quickly how to color in the sun area with marker. So I'm going to with high quality. So I'm going to choose a yellow marker. I wonder if I want really bright yellow or kind of want more of an orangey yellow. That's too orange. Alright, looks like I only have the, oh, maybe is this, yeah, here we go. Alright, so I'm going to use this marker, and the difference between, oh, that one's too dark. Let's try this one. The difference between colored pencils and markers, there we go, is that with colored pencils you can blend really easily. With markers, it's harder to blend. You can blend with markers, but colored pencils make it a little bit more easy, excuse me, not more easily. So you can see that with my marker, and I have a marker that has a dual tip. So I have this chisel tip down here, and I have this tip this smaller point right here that has that tip. When you're using regular washable markers, you can get the same effect. You just use the side of the marker. So like if I was drawing with my Sharpie and I wanted these bigger, wider lines that took up more space, I would use the side of my marker. And then if I wanted the more narrow marks, I would use the point of my marker. So you can see I'm moving my hand really slowly. I'm moving around the border of my shape, so you can see that black line is the border of my sun shape. And in the smaller spaces, I'm using the point of my marker, so I don't go over any part I already colored. And then going around up here really carefully, just around the edge of my shape. That's going to give me a little bit more room to work with, because when I'm coloring in here, since I already put my color right next to the border of my shape, I'm not as likely to go over my lines. Now with the markers that I'm using, I usually have to add 2 layers of marker ink, because you can see, and even there I went over the line a little bit because I was going too fast, so let me slow down. So you can kind of see how the color's not quite even yet, so I always like to go over twice with my marker to really kind of hide those, because you can see the lines and they look nice and neat because they're all going the same direction, but ideally you wouldn't like to see those lines at all. Big shapes I can move a little bit faster, but not too fast, because remember, I moved too fast and I colored onto my surfboard right there. So I filled in the whole space. There's no white spots. But now I have all of these lines I have to kind of deal with. So I'm going to go back over and cover up those lines. So again, you would just be using the sides of your marker to do this, and really taking your time. And I like to kind of, when I'm coloring a big space like this with marker, I like to think about it in chunks. So I'm breaking this larger space
space or shape into a smaller shape or space. So you can see right here, like I focused on this part first, and then I focused on this part. Now I'm kind of focusing on this spot right here. And that way it makes it seem like it's not quite as big of a space. It doesn't feel as overwhelming to color in, because this is a big piece of paper. So there's just a couple more spots. I'm just going to lightly touch up because I don't want that line to be visible. And it kind of is. So I've discovered with these markers especially, which might be the ones that you have at home, they might be different. These markers need to dry a little bit before you get the final effect. So I'm going to leave it be. I'm going to stop adding ink to it because I don't want it to get so saturated that I can't fix the lines later. So I'm going to let it dry and see if I can, if it dries more evenly than it's looking right now. But I'm going to go back in and I'm going to show you how to color in small spaces with markers. So again, I'm going to go back to my surfboard right here that has my warm colors in it, and I'm going to use the tip or the finer point marker because my spaces are smaller. And again, I'm moving because it's a fine point marker, I'm moving it in those circular motions to fill in all the space. There's no white spots. I am moving my marker back and forth in the same direction, so if I start coloring in from side to side, I continue in that motion. I don't switch to up and down. Right. So there's that color. Let's choose bright pink so that we have some contrast. And I'm moving back and forth and sticking with that same direction with my marks. I'm doing the same here. Now on that one I went outside of the lines a little bit, and you can tell that I went outside of the lines, maybe not in the video, but if you look really closely I can see where my marker picked up some of the Sharpie and kind of smeared the Sharpie ink a little bit, which I want to avoid as much as I can. Luckily it's not too bad, but in the future I'll need to be careful with it. Alright, so that would be how I would color in smaller spaces with a marker. Let me color in. So it's always really important that we color in our whole picture. So even the space around the flowers, I would color in. And the flowers would be a different color. So I'm using a variety of colors. I'm not using just one or two or even three. I think so far I've used 3 on the water, 1 on the sun, 1, 2, 3, or wait, 1, 2, 3 for here, 2 for here, 2 for here. So I'm using all kinds of colors. I'm not limiting my color choices to just 1 or 2. So now right now I'm drawing around my smaller objects in the surfboard, so that my background is different than the flowers. And you could do the flowers first if you wanted to, that's fine, but I wanted to make sure to do the background because that should also be colored in. Now I'm not going to color my flowers in the same color green, I'm going to color them in a different color green. Or not a different color green, a different color altogether. If I wanted to use green I could, but just a different kind of it. Right, so you can kind of see that there are some lines right here, so I can go back in, add another layer of ink to cover that up so that everything's well blended. And then I would continue all the way up the surfboard, and then when I was done with that, I could go on to my flowers. So you can see I'm kind of working all over the paper, and I'm turning it as I go so that I can hit all the different angles that I need to with my hand. If I get kind of sick of or bored of coloring in one spot, I can switch it up and always come back to it. So I'm going to leave this kind of half done for right now, because I want to show you guys how to use crayons. So I'm going to color in my sand, I think, with crayon, because crayon kind of has that texture. When you color with it, it kind of reminds me of sand. So I have brown, which is going to be great for coloring in my sand, because I can color in, I can press hard with it to make really dark brown, or I can press light with it to make tan. I'm also going to hang on to my orange, because I can do some blending. Actually, that's yellow orange. So I'm going to hang on to my yellow orange, my regular orange, and I think also my red orange. I don't think I need my red, but maybe I do. Alright, so I'm going to set that aside. Then the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my lighter color, my lightest color, and that's this yellow orange. And let's just color in a small section of this, because this video is getting really long and I want to make sure that you guys can see all of this. So I'm just going to really lightly, super lightly with my crayon, hardly any color at all, just getting a base in of my lightest color. And I'm not going to fill in the entire space. I'm going to leave some spaces white so that the other colors can fill in those spaces. And again, I'm going around my marker, because even when you think your Sharpie is dry, sometimes it's not, and then it smears and you get a nice streak that you were not expecting in the middle of your artwork that you just spent a very long time on. Alright, so that would be my base color for my sand. Now I'm going to take my brown and really super lightly, I'm going to go over top of my yellow orange. I'm not pressing very hard because it's always easier to add color, especially with crayon, than it is to take away. Crayon, you kind of are, whenever your color is on, once it's on there, it's on there. So really pressing lightly. I'm not coloring in all of my spaces because I'm going to leave some spaces for my other colors. And then in areas where maybe I want it to be a little bit darker, so maybe, because the sun's behind the surfboard, so maybe there would be like a shadow right here. So maybe here I want it to be a little darker, so I can press with my brown to kind of make it a little bit more of a shadow right there. But then, now I have to kind of gradually pull it out so it doesn't, so it blends gradually into these other colors. So I'm pressing lighter here at the edges and pressing harder right here, especially directly in front of the surfboard. Maybe a darker color. And I'm going to go back to my yellow orange, blend it a little bit more over here. Alright, I'm going to try my red orange, kind of layer over it. Not everywhere. See, I'm pressing really, really lightly. I'm still staying inside of my line. Alright, so that would be how you could draw our color in, excuse me, a big, maybe we want it to be a little bit darker right here, area with crayons, blending. And you notice that I used a variety of crayons. I used at least 3 colors and kind of layered them to make another color. Okay, and now maybe I want to use these colors to color in my smaller spaces. So I always feel challenged when I use crayons because I always press really hard with crayons, which means that I often break them. So I like to do a little, and you don't have to do this, you can just press lightly, but I like to outline the shape that I'm coloring in with crayons to get that different value. So now you want to be careful with crayons too when you're working, because when you draw on top of your marker, it's going to make that marker color, or that marker look a little bit milky. It's going to cover up because it will sit on top of a Sharpie. And also, you want to be careful when you're brushing away the crumbs that you get after you color, those wax bits after you color with crayons, because those are still capable of coloring, and if you press too hard, you could get a streak from that color. So here we go. Again, this is what it looks like without that line around the edge. Again, just moving my crayon in those circles, that circular motion again. Alright, so you can use any of these tips and tricks on anything where you have to use colored pencils, crayons, or markers. These are all great strategies to use. And especially, I really love the way that this turned out right here with the blending. Alright friends, so we want to make sure we're using multiple colors. We want to make sure that we are taking our time. And we want to make sure that we are staying inside the lines. And we want to really focus on taking our time. So you'll notice that I still have a lot to color in, and this video has been going on for a while.